Podcast 2, Second Chances, a journey of survival and self-discovery. Welcome back to our series where we explore the complexities of life, the moments that define us, and the resilience we discover in the aftermath of trauma. I'm Liz Wells, and today we're diving deep into the power of survival, how we cope, how we rebuild, and what it really means to live after everything seems lost. This is a personal journey, one of despair, hope, and self-discovery. Let's begin. What do you do when you suddenly receive news so destructive it derails your life completely, throwing you into a whirlwind from which there's no escape? Imagine standing powerless, watching helplessly as everything you've built is torn apart. Your plans, your hopes, your identity, gone. And all you can do is observe as the foundations of your life are exposed, leaving you raw and vulnerable. For me, it all started on a day that seemed like any other. But without warning, it hit. A hurricane, a tornado, and a tsunami all at once. Everything was torn down, leaving me with the only thing, one thing, the only thing that ever truly mattered: my life. The words were very simple. Liver failure. Two cold words delivered with clinical detachment, but in that moment, they became a death sentence. I wasn't afraid of dying. What scared me most was dying without having fulfilled my potential. I sat alone in that waiting room, staring down the reality that my largest organ was failing. The pain was overwhelming, and for a time I felt numb. I could hardly believe it was happening to me. I'd been transported into an alternative reality, a world where the only certainty was death. As a nurse, I'd seen life and death up close, but this was different. This wasn't someone else's story, it was mine. My time was running out, and there was no escaping it. The sand in the hourglass of my life had stopped falling, and I felt like I had reached the end. A million thoughts raced through my mind, each more overwhelming than the last. But amidst the chaos, there was one thing that anchored me: my faith. It was as if, in the middle of a storm, I found a quiet place of peace. I'd grown up in the church, and my faith had always been a source of comfort. I believed in eternal life, in the promise of heaven. I wasn't afraid of dying because I knew that when the time came, I would be welcomed into God's arms. I believed in that love and trusted in it completely. But thinking of my family, of Ian, of our children, the pain of leaving them behind was unbearable. Tears filled my eyes, and for a moment I felt paralysed by grief. Yet I held on to the hope that one day we would all be reunited in paradise. That thought was the only thing that kept me from being consumed by the pain. As I sat there staring at that mental image of a sand timer, something hit me. This could really be it. my life could end. And everything I thought mattered, money, career, success, none of it did anymore. What mattered was the impact I had on others. Not the degrees I earned or the business deals I closed, but the difference I made in people's lives. Had I used my 43 years wisely, I had a wonderful husband, 5 incredible children, but beyond that, what had I accomplished? It wasn't about feeling judged. It was about feeling challenged. I'd been striving for things that, in the face of death, meant nothing. What mattered was the legacy of kindness, love, and impact I left behind. Soon, I realised that the greatest loss would be my voice, my influence, my ability to touch the lives of others. Life was slipping away and soon I would be absent. I wasn't ready for that, but I had no choice. But then, in a twist of fate, I was given the gift of life, a second chance in the form of a transplanted liver. Suddenly, I had more time. But what was I supposed to do with it? What was my purpose now, with this second life? People say second chances are rare, and yet here I was given one. The question that haunted me was why? Why had I been spared? I realised that so much of my life had been about fitting in, about projecting success to the world. Marriage, family, house, career. It was all part of the narrative I'd built. But when it was all stripped away, I had to confront the truth. On the outside, I'd appeared to have it all. But inside, I was falling apart. I'd spent my life trying to patch up pain with accomplishments, but nothing worked. It wasn't until I was forced to face my mortality that I began a journey of true self-discovery, a journey that, in many ways, began with that diagnosis and continues even now. Living after trauma is a process. It's an exploration of self. Painful, but necessary. The world we live in is obsessed with appearances, with shouting about success from every rooftop. But that can distract us from the truth, from the reality that many of us are struggling, hurting beneath the surface. For me, living after trauma has become about understanding myself, being vulnerable, and sharing that vulnerability with others. It's about breaking down the walls I built to protect myself from pain, walls that ultimately isolated me. In this second chance at life, my mission is to use my voice, to help myself and others. I've realised that by confronting the truth, by being honest about our struggles, we can avoid the darkness that so easily consumes us. And so, the process begins. Thank you for listening to this episode of our podcast. If today's story resonated with you, or if you've experienced something similar, know that you're not alone. Healing is a journey, one that continues day by day. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.